All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Running with Wolves. Today, we are going to talk all about how to make content creation super easy, but also super profitable. Something I've been hearing from you guys recently is like, Savannah, I don't know what's going on, but it's taking me 4 hours every day to create all the content that I need to create in order to sell to my audience. And I don't have time for that. And I would agree. No one has time for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down a client story today about how she not only takes less than an hour every day to create sales, but on top of that, honestly, you guys, I'm so proud of this client. She has gone from making, I think it was like less than $500 a day to making $1,000 a day in sales. And now I believe she's making $2,000 a day. So she's doubled her revenue with us multiple times. She started with us and she was, like I said, only making about $500 a day, which I believe is about 15 grand per month, which like not bad, but she wanted to scale. And her biggest goal was like $60,000 a month. Like if I can hit that, I can do anything. She literally just hit $62,000 a month working with us. I think she's been with us for about 4 months and she's about to launch something that's going to bring in even more revenue for her. But the really cool part about that is that, no joke, you guys, it's taking her less than an hour every day to create content. So we're going to break down her strategy, her content creation process, so that you can use it too, so that you can not only create way more sales and double your revenue multiple times in the upcoming months, but you can also create content really fast and easy. So before, when she first came to us in terms of her content, she was still creating the same amount of content she is now. So let that be said. She was doing 3 TikToks a day, showing up on her Instagram feed, showing up on her stories. She was creating a lot of content. So she was doing all the things right. She had a lot of drive. She was like, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to create a ton of content. So when she first came to us, she was making a very crucial mistake that we see a lot of business owners making, which is that she was posting great, valuable content. She was warming her audience up. She was getting them to be obsessed with her brand, but she wasn't actually selling to them. And if she was selling, she wasn't selling in a way that made sense to her target audience. So there were a couple of things that we changed that we'll talk about in her strategy in just a second. But the other thing I also want to mention is that now, like I said, she's making $62,000 a month, which is like bigger than her big goal that she had when she was working with us. But now that she's making that kind of money, the other thing that's really cool is that her sales aren't tied to her posting. So her sales happen when she posts, yes, but she also has people consistently coming into her audience every day, engaging her content, being obsessed with her content, being sold to by her content, and then they're buying from her. Even on days that she's not posting, even on the weekends, when she's on vacation, any of those things, right? So it's really cool because yes, she's creating sales, but it's not directly tied to her efforts. So if you want to get there, here's what your strategy and your content creation process is going to need to look like. So number 1, when it comes to creating content, the biggest mistake that I see business owners make is that they don't know before they create content what they're going to talk about. And honestly, in the past, I had made this mistake, right? I was like, oh, I already know what I need to talk about. It's fine. And then I would go to create content. I'm like, I have no idea what I need to be talking about right now. And it can get really frustrating because then you're supposed to spend 2 hours, 1 hour creating content for the next week, 2 weeks. And instead, you spend that time scrolling through Instagram, looking at your competitors' pages, trying to figure out what the heck you need to talk about in order to see the same results that they're seeing. Honestly, it's crazy because now I see it in the reverse. I see a bunch of our competitors stalking our content, like in our stories or favoriting our TikToks or things like that, where I'm like, okay, now we're the people that they're looking at for inspiration because they want the same results that we've created, which is a cool turn of events, but we've all been there. Everyone has those experiences where they're just like, I have genuinely no idea what to talk about right now, right? So the biggest mistake I see people make is try to create content without knowing what to talk about. You have to prep for content creation, contrary to popular belief. It's really important. So what you need to do to prepare to create content is, number 1, look at your marketing and sales data. It's so important. And you guys, if you know how to translate your marketing and sales data, you will literally have a step-by-step conversation with your audience of what they're trying to tell you. It is literally going to reveal so many things because it's going to show you exactly what's resonating with them, exactly what's pushing them to buy, exactly what's creating really incredible visibility. So you have to prepare when it comes to creating content. So you've got to know how to look at your marketing and sales data and really understand what it is that your audience is telling you that they like that's going viral, that they're engaging with the most, which is creating conversation. And you also need to be able to look at your marketing and sales data to understand exactly what it is that you need to say to get them to buy from you, because you can see like the days that you got a ton of applications or inquiries or sales or website traffic or things like that, and you can match it up with what you talked about on that day, because that is going to give you a really clear understanding of what you need to be talking about to get people to buy from you. So it's literally right off the bat going to give you content inspiration anyways. Another thing that you need to be looking at is, what are people telling you in your comments, in your DMs? What are people saying they're struggling with? What do people desire? And then last but not least, something that I have relearned recently is that if you aren't consuming enough, you have nothing to say. And that's because recently I kind of I want to say towards the end of last year, fell off the bandwagon of like professional and personal development just because of everything that was going on at the time. But what was really cool was, and I felt like at the time, I was like, I feel like I'm talking about the same thing over and over again. I don't understand why my content isn't really clicking with people. I don't really understand what I'm doing wrong. And then I realized everything I was posting literally sounded the same. So like, just a heads up for you guys, I've been in business for 4.5 years at this point, almost 5. This will happen to you over and over again. You will go through phases of feeling inspired creatively versus not feeling inspired, but the more that you can consume, not of your competitors' content, but professional development stuff, books, podcasts, your target audience's content, the more you consume, the more conversations you have, the more you have to talk about. So it's really important that you guys are consistently consuming things so you have different examples or stories to tell in your content that generates sales based on what you're talking about to your audience. So you want to gather all that information before you go to create content. And then from there, you want to obviously brainstorm the exact topics of the content that you're going to be talking about. And that's when it comes to a really good production plan. So this is another bottleneck I see a lot of business owners experience. Once they've got their strategy down, it then becomes, how do I produce all of this content while still doing all of the other things that I need to do as a business owner, especially when you don't have a big team. I can remember the days where I did not have a team and I was doing all the things. I was running my business. I was creating and writing all of my content. I was filming all of my content, having all my sales conversations, and it was really overwhelming at times. But it wasn't until I got a really great production plan down that I really started to get into a flow. So there's 2 different production plans that we have, which is our micro production plan and our macro production plan. So a lot of times before you get to like 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, your micro production plan is going to be a perfect fit for you because it's creating a lot of little pieces of content. And the reason why I like this production plan is because number one, it allows you to pivot really quickly. So like, let's say, 2 days ago, you had a video that went massively viral. If you don't have your content planned out a month in advance with a ton of repurposed content, like you would with the macro production plan, you can respond to different comments from that TikTok. You can create more content similar to that that's going to generate the same results and like ride that virality wave, right? It's just a different way of doing things because it's giving your audience a different experience, but it's a different stage of business. So the micro production plan also allows you to have a really clear understanding of what's working and what's not for your audience very quickly. So you can refine your strategy that much faster and see results that much faster. So a lot of you guys are going to be using the micro production plan, which means that you're going to have different pieces of content on different platforms going out every single day. But the question becomes, how do you create all that content, post it, all that good stuff so it creates those results? You have to be really self-aware, honestly, of how you operate. So there are some people who can literally batch 2 weeks worth of content in one day and it takes them 2 hours, they're good, and then after that they don't worry about it for 2 weeks and they just want it out of the way. They can stay in that creative flow. They know that it's coming. They can prepare themselves for it and they get it done. There are some people who, if they were trying to batch film or batch write or any of those things, that kind of content would lose steam, would lose focus, would lose creativity halfway through, and then they're not going to get that content done. Or they can't force themselves to be creative, right? There's a lot that goes into how people operate that is a deciding factor in terms of how you go about creating that content. So before I had a team, honestly, what I would do is I would block off an hour every single morning. I already had the topics of what I was already going to be talking about in each piece of content created. So I already knew what I was going to be talking about, but I would film my 3 TikToks and get on my stories, and I would sell every single morning just for that hour before I started my day. And then I had pre-written my 3 Instagram feed posts that were going to be going up. Sometimes I would even write them day of, but again, I already knew what I was going to be talking about. The reason why I can do that is because number 1, I adjusted my schedule to fit that. Number 2, I was really consistent and I held myself accountable to be consistent. There are some people who will basically say, oh yeah, I'm going to create my content every day, but then jump right into client work or customer work or, product development or any of those things and postpone content until end of day, or it just doesn't even go out, right? So if you can't hold yourself accountable and you can't fit it into your schedule every day, you might need to batch create, which means maybe every Friday you block out, which is what I do now. You block out 2 hours, you film any content that needs to be filmed for the next week or 2 weeks, and then you're done with it for the next week or 2 weeks, however long you filmed, right? So for me, I still film some TikToks, right? I don't write my content anymore, but I still show up on my stories and I sell. And so with my Friday routine, every morning for 2 hours, I just film my next 2 weeks worth of TikToks and I'm good. And I don't have to worry about it and I'm done, right? So for those of you who don't have a team, who are creating all of your content at once, I need you to think about and sit down and really understand, how do I operate? Can I batch create? Do I want to batch create? Am I going to create quality content if I batch create? And if not, can I hold myself accountable to create content every single day so I can get the content out on time? Can I prioritize it? Because it really is the moneymaker, right? So that's kind of like the production plan essentially that you have to ask yourself. Then from there, the process looks like you basically filming all of your content, writing all of your content, posting all of your content, designing the graphics, designing the reels, everything either that day or every other week if you're batch creating it essentially. So with this client specifically, she already was creating content every single day. So she already knew that that production plan would work really, really well for her. And it wasn't taking her an insane amount of time, but it was taking her, longer than she would like to create that content. The biggest reason why it was taking her so long was because she was really confused about what she should be saying in her content. So like we talked about, she would spend day after day after day brainstorming content ideas, looking at competitors' content, scrolling her TikTok For You page or her Instagram page to get inspiration of what she should be talking about rather than already knowing what she should be talking about. And so what it really ultimately came down to, the production side, she was good. It was the strategy side where she was really confused. And once she got the strategy side really nailed, she was able to come up with ideas constantly. And now she knows exactly how to create the results that she's creating right now and scale from there. She would not have been able to do this if she didn't have a really deep understanding of how to listen to her audience. So she did a really good job of understanding, like what we were teaching her, how to dive into her marketing and sales data and how to understand what it is that her audience needs to hear from her to go viral, to engage with her content, and to create that conversions, those sales. So with that conversion content, the biggest thing for her that she was lacking was selling her service or her digital products as a solution. So this client is a mobile bartender when she came to us, so she was offering that service. But on top of that, she was selling digital products that would help people understand how to successfully launch their own mobile bartending service, basically. And so she was basically just talking about the service or talking about those products. She wasn't talking about the solution that they offered. So we took her from basically saying, oh, this is my mobile bartending service. Oh, this is my, masterclass for how to launch a successful mobile bartending service, to then talking about, because she has very analytical buyers who want a lot of ROI. It's like, think about the insane amount of money that you are missing out on because you don't understand how to successfully set up a mobile bartending service. You don't know how to get clients. You don't know how to do XYZ. We talk about all their problems. And then she says, That's exactly what this program that I've created, or this guide that I've created, is going to teach you how to do. It's going to help you teach. It's going to teach you to understand exactly where to find mobile bartending clients, to get them to sign with you, no questions asked, for their events, to refer people to you, blah, 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 right? It's giving them a solution. And then it's talking about, yes, you're going to invest this much money, but I've made this much money, or my clients have made this much money by being able to master these skills. So think about how worthwhile that investment's going to be for you, right? They're talking about the solution that that guide offers, or that mobile bartending service offers, and exactly how they can create that same ROI by purchasing that guide. So the conversion content was really lacking in terms of the solution, but the second she started to implement that into her strategy, it got so easy. And she knew that that was the solution her target audience needed, because she was able to have a conversation with them, because she was able to do market research, because she watched what they said they wanted in sales conversations, in comments, etc. And she infused all of that into her content. The biggest mistake that I see people make when it comes to creating content ideas is not taking them directly from conversations that they're having with their target audience. They're not taking the exact words. This is called mirroring. It's a sales psychology tactic. And the biggest mistake I see people making is that they're talking about the problem or the desire, but they're either talking about it in their language, which is like very professional jargon, or they're not talking about it at all, right? So you really want to make sure that you are pulling exact verbiage that your target audience has said that they want, or that they're struggling with, or the solution that they're looking for, and using it back to them so that they can consistently feel seen, heard, understood, trust you more, and then eventually buy from you. The other thing we made sure she didn't do was plan too far out with her content. It was really funny because this client specifically, like, she's just a freaking workhorse. She was ready to create a ton of content. She was like, I'll create a whole month's worth of content. I'm like, slow your roll. I would love that energy. But why we don't want to plan too far out is because a lot of times your content, in order to convert, needs to be responsive to your audience. We have very proactive content that's designed to attract people in, to warm them, but to convert them, it's a conversation. And so if you've already planned out what you're going to say for the next 2 weeks, and your audience is over here saying something different, and you don't respond to that, you're not going to create a lot of sales really easily. So it's really important that you only plan out your content maybe like 2 weeks in advance, but to also be flexible and be able to pivot in your content and talk about different things if you need to, if it comes up from your audience, to convert them. I always say that, like, TikTok's a great place to be proactive. Instagram stories is your place to be responsive to your audience, to be reactive to your audience, based on sales conversations you're having with them, based on what they're commenting, engaging, what they're talking about. It's super, super important. I always say I create content based on any objections we currently have, any sales conversations we currently have, any new client results that I want to share. And then from there, if I don't have anything to talk about, then if I have a video popping off on TikTok, I'll sell around that same topic on my Instagram stories. And then from there, if I still don't have anything to talk about, I'll basically repurpose whatever's going on our feed onto our stories that day. So that's kind of like the order of priorities of how I post and sell on our stories. So like we talked about, pivoting is really important to be able to be responsive to your audience. So I've had a lot of people basically ask me, I just created a whole month's worth of content, and I'm realizing that it really isn't exciting to my audience. It's not doing anything for them. And I've just done all this market research, and I'm realizing they need to hear something totally different from me. Can I still use this content? It's a yes and no answer. Yes, you can, obviously. It's not going to create the results that you're looking for. If you realize the content you've already created, if you've realized you need to pivot away from that in order to create sales, that's probably what you need to do, right? But you can try and salvage that content. Obviously, you can look through and see, like, is there any way that I can kind of change the lens of this content to align with what my audience needs to hear from me? If not, it's time to pivot away from it. But that's why it's so important every time you create content to prep for that content creation, and you go through that marketing and sales information, your sales conversations, what people are commenting and saying, so that what you're talking about is super responsive to your audience. Another thing when it comes to like pivoting your content, people are be like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go and remake all of this content. A tip for pivoting your content away from what wasn't working to what is working. Like for example, this week, I actually had to give feedback to our team and say like, hey, this content isn't what we talked about in terms of how we're pivoting in a different direction in our content. It's not aligned with what we talked about. We need to redo this. And so it's gonna create more work for them. However, the way that we're doing it is we're going through those captions and we're seeing, can we switch the lens of this? Can we tell a different story here? Or can we use the same story but be more analytical or emotional or any of the directions we're taking it? And then if we already have like a carousel created, can we basically shift the verbiage or add different visuals or any of those things to basically take a new lens to that content so that we don't have to completely scrap it. We're just adding different elements to it to align it with the lens we want to take that content through. So when it comes to pivoting your content, remember it is possible to salvage your content if you have the right information, obviously, to infuse into that content. So when it comes to creating a really easy content creation process, just to kind of tie this episode together, when you're trying to create really easy content that converts, biggest mistake to avoid is not looking at your data. So you want to make sure you're prepping for that content creation by looking at your marketing and sales data, looking at your market research, looking at what your audience has been telling you. Know the production plan that's going to work for you. Know yourself. Know the easiest way for you to implement that information into your content. Are you batching? Are you creating on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, right? And then from there, if you do realize you need to shift away from the content you'd already created because it's just not hitting for your audience, see if you can salvage the caption. See if you can add in a different lens that you can talk about that topic through so that it does align with what your audience needs to hear. Can you add in a different call to action, a different hook? Can you update the visuals to really hit home for your audience instead of completely scrapping that piece of content and starting over? So if you guys have questions about content creation, if content creation feels hard for you, if the content you're creating isn't creating sales for you, I have been doing free lives every Monday and Friday on Instagram. Please come to those. Please ask me your questions. I would love to answer them for you so that you guys get a really clear picture of exactly what it is that you need to do in order to create sales through your content. Otherwise, if you are watching this on social media, on YouTube, leave your questions in the comments below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.